The massive shadow ships of the Vorthok Empire cut through space like black knives against the stars. Commander Rilkthan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue and green world grow larger on the viewing screen. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he read the scanner reports. Another primitive world, he muttered to his second-in-command. Look at this data. They still use chemical rockets to reach their own moon. Their weapons are metal projectiles and explosive devices. They cannot even unite their own planet under one government. The bridge crew made pleased clicking sounds with their mandibles. This would be easy work. The Vorthok had perfected their conquest method over 300 years. First, they would rain terror from the sky. Then they would collect specimens to drain a fear energy. Finally, the broken survivors would surrender completely. Fear was everything to the Vorthok. Their bodies fed on the psychic energy that terror produced. A single frightened creature could sustain a Vorthok warrior for days. An entire planet in panic could feed their empire for years. It was efficient. It was clean. It always worked. Begin. Bombardment Protocol 7, Rilkthan ordered. Target their largest population centers. Make sure the destruction is visible from great distances. I want every human on that planet to see their civilization burning. The weapons charged with a deep humming sound. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking the major cities of what the humans called Earth. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the continents. Rilkthan expected the usual response within minutes. But the minutes passed, and something was wrong. Commander, reported the communications officer, we are receiving transmissions from the surface. Excellent. Put their surrender broadcast on the main speakers. The bridge filled with human voices, but they were not screaming for mercy. Instead, clear military communications crackled through the air. All units, maintain formation. Civilian evacuation is proceeding according to plan. Medical teams report to designated safe zones. Rilkthan's feeding tendrils twitched with confusion. Where are the panic broadcasts? Where are their leaders, begging for their lives? The communications officer adjusted the frequencies. More human voices filled the bridge. Emergency shelters are holding steady. Food distribution continues on schedule. Keep the children calm and organized. This is unusual, admitted the second-in-command. Most species begin broadcasting surrender offers within the first hour. Rilkthan studied the tactical displays. The humans were responding to the attack, but not in the expected way. Instead of chaos, they showed organization. Instead of every individual trying to save themselves, they appeared to be helping each other. Deploy the collection ships, he ordered. Bring me specimens for processing. Once we begin the fear extraction, their resistance will crumble. The transport vessels descended through Earth's atmosphere like hungry predators. They focused on the Korean peninsula, where the population density promised good harvests. The collection beams activated, pulling humans up from the surface in groups of dozens. Private Minho was checking on wounded civilians when the beam caught him. One moment he was helping an old man to safety. The next he was floating upward in a column of green light. Around him, other people were also being lifted. Soldiers, teachers, shopkeepers, even children. Stay calm, everyone, Minho called out as they rose toward the alien ship. Remember your training. Help each other, Sergeant. Jiho found herself in the same beam, along with a woman named Suna, who had been organizing the evacuation of a school. Are you hurt? Suna asked immediately, checking Jiho for injuries even as they were being abducted. Little Nari, only 7 years old, was crying until an elderly shopkeeper named Hannah took her hand. Do not be afraid, little one. We will look after you. In the transport ship's cargo hold, Engineer Doyon was already studying the walls and ceiling, trying to understand the alien technology, instead of cowering in terror. He seemed genuinely curious about how their captors had built such advanced vessels. The Vorthok crew, operating the transport ships. reported back to Commander Rilkthan with growing bewilderment. Sir, the specimens are not behaving according to standard patterns. What do you mean? Rilkthan demanded. They are helping each other, sir. The stronger ones are protecting the weaker ones. The adults are comforting the children. Some of them are even trying to communicate with us. Through the ship's internal monitors, Rilkthan could see into the cargo holds. Humans sat in groups, sharing what little they had. The soldiers were organizing the civilians. The teachers were keeping the children occupied with games and songs. An old woman was braiding a little girl's hair. Where is their fear? Rilkthan whispered. They should be screaming. They should be begging. They should be offering us anything we want in exchange for their lives. Instead, the humans were singing. Their voices rose together in harmonious melodies that somehow seemed to fill the entire ship. The Vorthok crew members closest to the cargo holds began to report strange sensations, discomfort, unease, something they had never experienced before. As the transport ships docked with the main fleet, Commander Rilkthan felt something he had not experienced in his 200 years of conquest. For the first time, he was uncertain. These humans were different from every other species the Vorthok had encountered. They showed no fear. The metal doors hissed open as Private Minho was dragged into the interrogation chamber. His hands were bound behind his back, but his eyes were alert and curious as he looked around the strange room. The walls seemed to move and bend in impossible ways, creating shapes that hurt to look at directly. Sub-Commander Nexville watched from behind his control panel, his forearms working the terror machines with practiced skill. He had broken thousands of prisoners in this room. The chamber was his masterpiece. Every surface, every sound, every scent was designed to create pure fear. Strap the human to the neural chair, Nexville ordered his assistants. They were small, gray creatures with large eyes that never blinked. They moved quickly and silently. Securing Minho to the metal chair in the center of the room, Nexville activated the first level of fear induction. The walls began to pulse with a sick, green light. Sounds too low for most ears to hear started vibrating through the floor and up into the chair. These sounds were designed to make the heart race and the mind panic. Now, Nexville said, leaning forward on his 6 legs, tell me about your planet's military defenses. Where are your weapon factories? How many soldiers do you have? Minho tilted his head to one side, completely ignoring the questions. Instead, he stared at the moving walls with genuine interest. This is amazing, he said. How do you make the walls do that? Is it some kind of magnetic field? Or maybe gravity manipulation? Nexville's feeding tendrils stopped moving. In all his years of interrogation, no prisoner had ever asked him about his equipment. They were supposed to be screaming by now, begging for mercy, offering any information to make the torture stop. You will answer my questions, Nexville hissed, increasing the fear frequencies. The sounds grew stronger, and chemical sprays began misting from hidden vents. These chemicals triggered panic responses in every known species. Minho sniffed the air and wrinkled his nose. Interesting smell. Are those pheromones? We studied chemical communication in basic training. Your species must have very advanced biochemistry to create compounds that affect other life forms. The Vorthok interrogator felt something he had never experienced before: confusion. His equipment readings showed that the human's heart rate was elevated, but not from fear. It seemed to be elevated from excitement and curiosity. In the next chamber, Teacher Suna had been placed in a group cell with 15 other humans. The Vorthok expected them to fight each other for resources, or to panic and create chaos. Instead, Suna had immediately begun organizing everyone. Hannah, you have experience with children. Please stay with Nari and keep her calm, Suna said to the elderly shopkeeper. Doyan, you understand machines better than the rest of us. Can you figure out how this room works? Engineer Doyan was already examining the walls and ceiling. The artificial gravity feels different here than it did on the transport ship, he said thoughtfully. I think we might be in a rotating section of their vessel. If I can calculate the rotation speed, we might be able to figure out how big this ship is. Sergeant Ji-ho had found the injured soldier that Suna mentioned. The man had been hurt during the capture, and his arm was bleeding. Does anyone have medical training? Ji-ho asked. I know some basic first aid, said a young woman named Yuna. She was a nurse from Busan, who had been captured while helping evacuate a hospital. We need to clean this wound and stop the bleeding. Old Hannah was sitting cross-legged on the floor with little Nari in her lap. Let me teach you a counting game, she said gently to the frightened child. We will count all the lights we can see, and then we will count all the sounds we can hear. Through the observation screens, Sub-Commander Nexville watched in growing alarm. The humans in the group cells were sharing their small portions of water. They were taking turns sleeping so that someone was always awake to watch for danger. The adults were protecting the children and the elderly. This was not how prisoners were supposed to behave. In Chamber 7, a human named Kyung was being subjected to the Nightmare Inducer, a device that created terrifying visions directly in the mind. But instead of screaming, Kyung was analyzing what he saw. These hallucinations are very detailed, he told his interrogator. The neural pathways you are stimulating must be incredibly precise. How do you map different species? Brain structures. The interrogator, a senior Vorthok named Velmer, reported to Nexville in panic. Sir, the fear extraction protocols are completely failing. The humans are not producing any psychic fear energy at all. Nexville left his own interrogation chamber and went to the main observation deck. On dozens of screens, he could see human prisoners throughout the ship. Not one of them was behaving according to the established patterns. In Cell Block C, humans were teaching each other songs to pass the time. In Block F, they had organized a system to share food equally. In Block J, an old man was telling stories to keep everyone's spirits up. What is wrong with these creatures? Nexville whispered to himself. Why are they not afraid? He opened a communication channel to Commander Rilkthan. Sir, we have a problem. The fear extraction is not working. The humans are. They are helping each other. There was a long silence from the command bridge. Finally, Rilkthan's voice came through, sounding confused and worried. That is impossible. All species break under our interrogation methods. Increase the intensity. But even as Nexville increased the torture devices to maximum power, the humans continued to show compassion to each other. They shared their pain. Instead of surrendering to it, they chose hope instead of despair. For the first time in Vorthok history, their prisoners were changing them instead of the other way around. 3 days had passed since the humans were brought aboard the Vorth fleet, and something strange was happening to the alien crew. In the lower decks, where the prisoners were kept, Guard Captain ZMC found himself watching the observation screens longer than necessary. Every morning at exactly the same time, Sergeant Ji-ho would stand in the center of the main holding cell and begin what the humans called exercises. She would move her body in precise patterns, and the other prisoners would copy her movements. Even the injured ones would do what they could from where they sat. 1, 2, 3, 4, Ji-ho would count as she moved her arms and legs. Keep your bodies strong. Keep your minds clear. The children would giggle as they tried to copy the adult movements. Old Hannah would do gentle versions from her seat on the floor. Even the most frightened prisoners would eventually join in. Teacher. Suna had turned part of the holding area into what she called a classroom. She would gather the younger humans around her and teach them mathematics, history, and languages. She used pieces of torn cloth and scratches on the metal walls to write lessons. Today we will learn about the stars, Suna would say, pointing to the small window that showed space. Each star is like our sun, and some of them have planets with other living things. Little Nari would raise her hand with questions. Are there children on those planets too? Do they go to school like us? Guard Captain Zethmik found these conversations disturbing. The humans were teaching their young ones about other worlds and other species with curiosity and wonder, not fear and hatred. This was not how prisoners were supposed to behave. The most unusual case was Private Minho. Somehow, he had begun talking to Junior Guard Kethel during meal delivery times. Instead of begging for better food or trying to escape, Minho asked questions about Kethel's life. "What is your home planet like?" Minho asked one day, as Kethel placed a food tray through the cell slot. "Do you have family there?" Kethel was surprised by the question. No prisoner had ever asked him anything personal before. It is a desert world," he answered without thinking. "Very hot. My offspring live there with my mate." "That sounds difficult," Minho said with genuine concern. "Being away from your family for these long space missions must be hard. Do you miss them?" Kethel felt something strange in his chest, an emotion he could not name. He quickly walked away, but the human's words stayed with him. That night, he dreamed about his home and wondered when he would see his offspring again. This was not the only strange thing happening. Little Nari had somehow found materials to make pictures, pieces of colored metal, burned cloth, anything she could use to create art. She would draw simple images of stick figures holding hands, or flowers, or houses. Then she would give these pictures to the guards, who watched her cell. "This is for you," she would say with a smile, holding up a crude drawing of what looked like a Vorthog and a human standing together under a yellow circle that was supposed to be a sun. "I hope it makes you happy." The guards did not know what to do with these gifts. They had been trained to expect hatred and fear from prisoners, not kindness and artwork from children. Interrogation Specialist Velmer reported his growing concerns to the daily command briefing. "Commander, the psychological profiles are completely wrong. These humans are not responding to our fear techniques." "Explain," Commander Rilkthin demanded, his 4 eyes focusing intently on the specialist. "Yesterday, Private Minho asked if I had family back home. When I confirmed that I did, he said he hoped I would get to see them safely again." Velmer's voice was confused and troubled. "He was concerned about my well-being, sir. A prisoner was worried about his captor." Rilkthin's mandibles clicked together nervously. This was unprecedented in 300 years of conquest. "Increase all pressure protocols immediately. Double the fear frequencies. Reduce food rations by half." But the increased torture only revealed more disturbing behavior from the humans. When Engineer Doyon was selected for enhanced interrogation, a process that usually broke prisoners within hours, something unexpected happened. "Take me instead," said Sergeant Jiho, stepping forward when the guards came for Doyon. "No, I will." "Go," said Teacher Suna. "Please, let me take his place," added another prisoner named Minsu. The Vorthok guards stood frozen, as nearly every human in the cell volunteered to take Doyon's place in the torture chamber. They were trying to protect each other, even though they knew what awaited them. When food rations were cut in half, the humans immediately began sharing what little they had. The adults gave most of their portions to the children and elderly. Hannah and Nari ate first, while the stronger adults made do with almost nothing. "We take care of our own," Jiho explained to a confused guard who asked why they were not fighting over the scarce food. "The weak ones need strength more than we do." The breaking point came during the 3rd night, when a plasma conduit ruptured on the detention level. Sparks flew everywhere, and both humans and Vorthok were injured by the explosion. Toxic gas began leaking from the damaged systems. Teacher Suna, who had mentioned having some medical training, immediately began helping the wounded. She did not discriminate between humans and Vorthok. She treated everyone who needed help. Her hands became covered with green Vorthok blood as she bandaged alien wounds and helped carry injured guards to safety. "Why are you helping us?" asked guard technician Morval, as Suna wrapped his burned arm. "We are your enemies." Suna looked at him with tired but kind eyes. "You are hurt," she said simply. "That is all that matters right now." That night, something unprecedented happened aboard the Vorthok fleet. Half the crew reported nightmares and disturbed sleep. They were not being attacked by human psychic powers. They were being tormented by their own consciences. For the first time in their species history, the Vorthok were experiencing guilt, doubt, and fear. They were supposed to be the conquerors, but somehow they felt like they were the ones being conquered. Commander Nexville could not sleep. For 3 nights, he had been haunted by the image of Teacher Suna treating his wounded crew members with gentle hands. Her kindness made no sense to him. She was a prisoner. He was her captor. Yet she had saved Vorthok lives without asking for anything in return. Unable to understand this behavior, Nexville went to his private terminal and accessed the ship's xenobiology database. He needed answers. He typed in Earth and human and waited for the files to load. What appeared on his screen made his blood run cold. Classification, Death World, Class 9, he read aloud in a whisper. Extreme danger level. Not recommended for colonization or standard conquest protocols. His 4 hands trembled as he scrolled through the data. Earth was a nightmare planet. The weather could kill with sudden storms, floods, and freezing temperatures. Massive predators hunted in packs. The ground itself would shake and split open. Without warning, diseases spread through the population regularly. Volcanoes erupted and covered entire regions in burning rock. How do they survive? Nexville muttered to himself. He read further. Humans had evolved, not in safe environments, but in constant danger. Every single day of their existence was a battle against their own world, trying to kill them. They had learned to face terror as a normal part of life. Nexville's feeding tendrils went limp as the truth hit him. The humans were not fearless because they were stupid or ignorant. They were choosing to be brave despite knowing exactly how dangerous their situation was. He looked at the observation screens with new eyes. When Private Minho made jokes with the guards, he was not being foolish. He was choosing to find humor instead of giving in to despair. When old Hannah comforted the frightened children, she was not being weak. She was showing strength by caring for others, even when she was afraid to. This was something the Vorthok had never seen before. The humans had turned hope into a weapon. Nexville shared his discovery with the other officers. Within hours, every Vorthok on the ship knew the truth about Earth. The knowledge spread like a disease through the crew. These prisoners understood death better than their captors did. They simply refused to let that knowledge destroy their spirits. Commander Rilkthon received the reports with growing anger and fear. His perfect conquest was falling apart. His crew was becoming infected with doubt and strange emotions. Something had to be done quickly. "We will make one final demonstration," he announced to his senior staff. "Select 5 prisoners for public execution. Broadcast it throughout the entire ship. When the other humans see their companions die, they will finally break." The selection was made randomly. Private Minho was chosen, along with Engineer Doyon, a young woman named Yuna, an elderly man called Daegu, and a teenager named Juno. They were brought to the ship's central execution chamber, while every screen on the vessel showed the proceedings. As Minho was led through the corridors in chains, he passed the holding cells where the other prisoners watched through the bars. Little Nari was crying, pressing her face against the metal. Minho stopped walking. Even though the guards tried to pull him forward, he looked directly at the 7-year-old girl and smiled. "Remember what Teacher Suna taught you about being brave," he said in a calm voice. "When you are scared, you can sing that song she taught us. Can you sing it for everyone now?" Nari wiped her tears and nodded. In a small, clear voice, she began to sing a Korean lullaby about finding light, even in the darkest night. Her voice was broadcast throughout the ship along with the execution proceedings. As the 5 humans were strapped to the execution devices, They did not beg for mercy or cry for help. Instead, they used their final moments to comfort the people who would watch them die. "Take care of each other," Doyon called out to the prisoners watching on the screens. "Do not let them make you hate," Yuna added. "Remember that we chose to stay human," said old Daegu. Teenager Junho looked directly into the camera. "Tell our families that we were not afraid." Minho was the last to speak. "We forgive you," he said, looking straight at Commander Rilkthan through the screen. "You do not understand what you are doing." The execution devices activated. Energy beams struck the 5 humans simultaneously. Their bodies went limp, and their life signs disappeared from the monitors. Commander waited for the fear energy to flow from the surviving prisoners. He expected screaming, panic, and finally the psychological break that would end this strange resistance. Instead, something impossible happened. The surviving humans began to sing, led by little Nara's voice. They sang the same lullaby that had echoed through the ship moments before. Their voices were sad but not broken. They were mourning their dead, but they were not surrendering. And throughout the Vorthok ship, crew members began to experience something their species had never felt before. Tears, actual tears, fell from alien eyes as they watched the humans honor their dead with song instead of hatred. Junior Guard Kethel, who had spoken with Minho about home and family, collapsed in his quarters and wept uncontrollably. Guard Captain Zethnek stared at his own hands and wondered what kind of monster he had become. Even Commander Rilkthan felt something breaking inside his chest. The executions had failed completely. Instead of creating fear, they had somehow transferred the humans' incomprehensible courage to their captors. The Vorthok crew was experiencing emotions they had no names for: guilt, sorrow, and the terrible weight of conscience. For the first time in their species' history, the Conquerors had become the conquered. The Vorthok Empire had conquered 40 worlds in 300 years. They had broken countless species and fed on the fear of entire civilizations. But now, for the first time in their history, the Conquerors were afraid. Commander Rilkthan stood on his bridge, watching his crew. With growing alarm, half of his soldiers could not sleep. The other half reported strange dreams filled with guilt and sorrow. His medical officers had no treatment for these new emotions that were spreading through his ship like a plague. "Sir," reported Chief Medical Officer Vorthau, 30% of the crew is showing signs of what the humans call depression. Our psychological profiles have no data on how to treat this condition. Rilkthan's mandibles clicked nervously. "What about the fear extraction? Are we at least getting some energy from the remaining prisoners?" "No, sir. If anything, the humans seem to be affecting us more than we are affecting them. Guard stations are requesting transfers away from the detention levels. The crew cannot stand to watch the prisoners anymore." In the detention levels, the surviving humans continued their strange behavior. Even after watching 5 of their companions die, they had not broken. Instead, they had grown closer together. They shared their grief, but they also shared their hope. Teacher Suna had organized memorial services for the dead. She spoke about Private Minho's kindness, Engineer Doyen's curiosity, and the others who had been executed. But instead of calling for revenge, she reminded everyone to forgive their captors. "They do not understand what they are doing," Suna said, repeating Minho's last words. "They have never learned to choose hope over fear." Sergeant Jiho maintained discipline and order among the prisoners. She made sure everyone stayed strong and healthy. "We honor our dead by staying human," she would say. "We do not let hatred win." Old Hannah continued to care for little Nari, who had stopped crying after the executions. The child seemed to understand something that the adults were still learning. She continued to draw pictures and give them to guards, even though 5 of her friends had been killed. The breaking point came on the 4th day after the executions. Sub-Commander Nexville was making his routine inspection of the detention levels when little Nari called out to him from her cell. "Mr. Alien," she said, in her small voice. I made something for you. Nextville had been avoiding the human prisoners since he discovered the truth about their death world. The knowledge that these beings chose courage every day, despite living in constant danger, had shattered his understanding of strength and weakness. I do not want anything from you, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Nari held up a piece of torn cloth. On it, she had drawn stick figures using burnt pieces of metal and colored fibers. The drawing showed a tall, six-legged figure standing next to smaller, two-legged figures. Above them was a yellow circle representing a sun. Around the figures, she had somehow written the word friends in shaky letters. I hope you get to go home soon, Nari said, pressing the drawing against the cell bars. Do you miss your family? Nextville stared at the crude artwork. This child had watched 5 adults die. She was a prisoner on an alien ship, far from her home world. She had every reason to hate him and his species. Yet she had spent time and effort making him a gift that showed humans and Vorthok as friends. The question about his family hit him like a physical blow. He did miss them. He missed his offspring and his mate on the desert world where he was born. He had been in space for 2 years, conquering and killing, and he suddenly wondered why. Why? He whispered, taking the drawing with trembling hands. Why do you show kindness to me? Nari smiled through the bars. Because that is what humans do. We take care of each other, even when we are scared. Nextville's psychological framework collapsed completely. Everything he had believed about strength, power, and conquest crumbled in that moment. He fell to his knees in front of the cell, clutching the child's drawing, and began to weep. The sound of a Vorthok officer crying echoed through the detention level. Other guards came running, but when they saw their sub-commander broken by a child's kindness, they too began to feel the weight of what they had done. Within hours, the emotional breakdown spread through the entire ship. Crew members could not perform their duties. The bridge was filled with officers, staring at screens, unable to concentrate. The mighty Vorthok war machine was grinding to a halt because its operators had developed consciences. Commander Rilkthan made the only decision he could. Activate emergency evacuation protocols, he ordered. Load all human prisoners into escape pods. Jettison them toward their home planet immediately. Sir, asked his second-in-command, are we showing mercy? No, Rilkthan replied, his voice hollow. We are saving ourselves. Keeping these humans aboard is destroying our ability to function. They are more dangerous to us as prisoners than they ever were as enemies. The surviving humans were quickly loaded into escape pods. Teacher Suna, Sergeant Jiho, Old Hannah, Little Nari, and 37 others were launched toward Earth's surface. As their pods fell through the atmosphere, they could see the massive Vorthok fleet turning away from their planet. Commander Rilkthan opened a priority communication channel to all Vorthok territories. His message was brief but urgent. Avoid the 3rd planet of the Sol system. Classification upgrade to extreme hazard. The inhabitants possess a weapon we cannot defend against. They have weaponized hope itself. Any attempt at conquest will result in psychological destruction of attacking forces. The Vorthok fleet jumped to hyperspace, fleeing from Earth as quickly as their engines could carry them. Behind them, they left a planet that had won its freedom not through superior weapons or technology, but through the simple act of refusing to stop being human. On Earth, the survivors were rescued and returned to their families. They carried with them a new understanding of their own strength. Humanity's greatest power was not their ability to destroy, but their ability to remain compassionate even in the face of cruelty. The Vorthok Empire, meanwhile, faced a crisis that would reshape their entire civilization. They had discovered beings who could not be conquered, and it forced them to question everything they believed about power and dominance. The humans had won by staying human,